Interestingly enough, this says I've got 5 minutes now. Okay, this is what I agreed to talk about. I'm not going to read it. This is something that says a bit about what FiveBarGate does. We like to stay independent. This is just going to go through because it's an infomercial basically. But we like to stay independent. We work with mostly private clients. Do a little bit of work with the government, Department for Transport, Department for Energy and Climate Change, in bioenergy. So the work we do is in the bioenergy space. Over the last few years, that's got a lot more involved in looking at sustainability and supply chain assurance and sustainability assurance of supply chains for bioenergy. That includes looking at a bunch of stuff around biodiversity, land use, and those kind of things, and carbon accounting, greenhouse gas reporting, and that area. So today specifically we're going to talk about greenhouse gas reporting, not going to talk about the other sustainability aspects. So what I'm going to try and do is go through what I said I'd do when I agreed to stand up in front of a bunch of people who I probably have very little in common with you in terms of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to try and share some of what I know to kind of help you understand a bit about what I think is going to become, and actually what I hope is going to become, a value-adding opportunity for UK agriculture, for UK landowners, for UK farmers. Where I'd like to be is that I think this is an opportunity for UK farmers, and I'm going to try and put some numbers on what that opportunity is. So, where does carbon accounting come from? Well, carbon accounting has, over the last 5 to 10 years, been driven from a regulatory requirement. So it originally came in the UK Renewable Transport Fuel Obligation, which is what RTFO means, which was a regulation that lots of farmers thought is going to create a great market for us and great market opportunities. There was a lot of discussion about Biofuels Corporation, there was a lot of discussion about NSUS, there's a lot of discussion about Vivergo and Viriol, discussion about Harvest Energy, and Greenergy having different biofuel projects that effectively create a market for crops. So there was a lot of excitement about some additional market opportunities. The original RTFO included this sustainability reporting requirement. That included a carbon calculator, a greenhouse gas reporting requirement. But the RTFO and biofuels were brought into disrepute by WWF, Friends of the Earth, who argue that if we take a field of wheat out of East Anglia, put that into biofuels, then that means we don't have that field of wheat available to go into feed or food. That means somewhere someone's going to chop down some rainforest and plant something that goes into feed or food. Now that argument has rung with politicians, has rung well with politicians, and that has created a hiatus that caused a stall in markets, particularly in the UK, in terms of investment, and has created a bit of a lag until we got the EU, European Union Renewable Energy Directive. And the EU Renewable Energy Directive now creates a much firmer framework than the original RTFO created. The RTFO was passed, became law, and then was paused. It was actually put on hold. So the government did exactly the same with biofuels as they're currently doing with the feed-in tariff on solar. And that is putting a stop, putting a brake on a market, on a developing market. The Renewable Energy Directive removes what was allowed in the original RTFO. So the original RTFO allowed you to report unknown. It allowed you to say, as BP or Shell or Exxon, I don't know where this biofuel has come from. That's what the original RTFO allowed you to do. The Renewable Energy Directive does not allow you to do that. It was this allowing unknown that brought biofuels into disrepute in the first place, arguably. The requirements for Renewable Energy Directive are long in terms of sustainability requirements and greenhouse gas requirements. They're written into what's called Article 17 of the Renewable Energy Directive. If anyone doesn't feel like sleeping, they can go away and find that. The other interesting little clause that goes with Article 17 is the one that follows it. Article 18 says in addition to having to say what the greenhouse gas footprint is of the biofuel, you also have to have that data verified and independently assured. That's what Article 18 says. So the UK RTFO now has a set of supply chain defaults, which were a bunch of sums done by a UK consultancy, not me, a UK consultancy that worked out what is the default carbon footprint in a certain area, and an area defined in Europe as the National Unit of Territorial something. NUTS 2 is the phrase that gets bandied around. So NUTS 2 is a regional definition, and you have to be able to demonstrate on a NUTS 2 regional definition that you achieve the minimum required carbon footprint saving for your crop. And some people have done some sums on that and worked out whether or not in different regions we do or we don't. What that creates is actually we find that in some regions we don't. So in some regions we can't sell the crop into biofuels. The market is closed to biofuels. So on the left is wheat, on the right is oilseed rape. So is it a problem for wheat? Probably not. Probably, I'm going to quickly get out of my depth when I start talking about where wheat is grown. But I think where those two red blobs are, there's probably not a lot of wheat. 2 or 3 red blobs are in the left side. I think there's probably not a lot of wheat grow. People tell me that the breadbasket of the UK is more down the east side, so I'm guessing that the northwest probably isn't too much of a problem, unless you live there and you are a farmer growing wheat, I guess. But in general terms, probably not too much of a problem. Oilseed rape looks a bit tricky. That looks a bit tricky. What that tells me is if you're growing oilseed rape in one of those red areas, you cannot sell your crop into biofuel. You do not meet the minimum requirement greenhouse gas saving. It's illegal. The end fuel is not a biofuel. It is illegal in European law. Okay, so having talked about regulatory drivers, there are some other drivers, and I think potentially more interesting drivers. They interest me more. And this is about, are there actually, we tend to kind of think of carrot and stick kind of stuff, and the regulatory drivers might be a bit of a stick. Are there any carrot kind of opportunities that are around in terms of people who actually are pursuing low carbon products as a marketing alternative? Is there a product proposition, a retail product proposition, or a product proposition that allows you to place a product into a market which has a specific feature, and that feature being, I'm a low carbon product? Okay. Now there is some of this developing. So we are seeing some of it in malting. Some Walker's Crisps have got a carbon label on the back. PepsiCo are doing this stuff around some of that stuff. PepsiCo are taking interest in it in oats as well. They've got something called Cool Farm Tool. And there's some stuff happening on farm inputs where companies providing inputs to farms are suggesting that their inputs are a lower carbon than other inputs. I've just pinched a couple of grabs from web pages, but and apologies to the companies concerned and apologies to the companies not listed. This isn't intended to be exhaustive. This is simply just a couple of screen grabs to show that it's going on. There are places you can go to find this stuff. I remember walking around cereals this year and I was amazed at the number of things that had low carbon written on them. It was actually quite refreshing, but it was also amazing. So that's kind of the scene setting, kind of a bit of a background. And if I'm going to summarize that into drivers, there are kind of the barrier to entry kind of drivers, kind of regulatory drivers. So something that says, if you don't do this, if you don't achieve a certain minimum requirement, you can't enter a market or you can't play in a market. And there are other opportunity kind of drivers, which might be about brand value, CSR, apologies is corporate social responsibility, retail kind of opportunities where retailers will look to create opportunity, the barrier to entry kind of stuff. The RED is the Renewable Energy Directive, the bottom left box. ISCC is the German way, which is the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification System, which is how you will do it in Germany. It's very descriptive. You know, you have to do it that way in Germany if you want to sell your crops into Germany. There is a little interesting wrinkle on that in the UK, which I just want to come to. Now, this is the bit that really interests me now. So, what does this mean in terms of opportunities? What does it mean for opportunities? And constraints. Well, constraints and opportunities. What we're looking for in terms of supplying carbon information into an end market, and I'm picking bioenergy and I'm picking biofuel, is we've got a supply chain that has got crop grown through a number of different processes and ending up as an energy vector in someone's stock blending and control system. And as you go through that, you need a data flow that accompanies the flow of material, accompanies the product flow. You need a data flow that provides supply chain assurance, that allows you to deliver evidence into some kind of assurance engine that gives confidence and allows verification. And that's for carbon footprinting as well. So this sustainability aspect is all taken care of, hopefully, by Red Tractor and SQC, Scottish Quality Cereals. But the carbon footprinting is, as we saw earlier with a slide on, particularly on oilseed rape, is a real issue. It's a real problem. So there are some constraints around having to collate information, having to collate evidence, having to pass that evidence through the supply chain. So there is some stuff to do. I mean, I would argue it's not. I would argue it's not an additional horrific amount of work, because it's probably information that already exists, because it's stuff like how much nitrogen was put on, what was the yield, what fertilizers, what other agronomy we used, what fungicides we used. I sat and watched all the slides on fungicides before, and I left the room. I was getting a headache. And I know you guys understand it, but I'm not even going to try. But that kind of information, when you put a fungicide on, it has a carbon footprint. The material itself has a carbon footprint, but the effect of it also will impact on the carbon footprint in terms of impacting on yield and helping you drive yield. So there's some constraints about having to manage information and having to manage information flow. So that information has to go right the way through from land through to end user. It's got to go through a number of trading partners. It's got to go through a number of processes. And here's something that says what kind of information, what kind of systems you have to have. And apologies for having so many words on a screen. I'm not really going to talk to it. You've got it in your pack. But this is the really interesting bit now. What does it mean in terms of when you look at, is there a value for sustainability? Is there a value for carbon? What does it mean? And where's the incentive to growers to reduce their carbon footprint? Well, I'm just going to drop a number on you. Okay. In Germany, ISC certified rapeseed methyl ester trades at a $50 a tonne premium relative to non-certified rapeseed methyl ester. So that's biodiesel. So biodiesel trades at a $50 premium. Okay. And if you wind your mind back to that little box that said ISCC on, in the UK, if you tick the little box at the bottom of the sheets that says I am ISCC certified, someone somewhere is getting $50. I bet the farmer isn't, from the farmers I've spoken to. But someone is getting $50 because the market is paying $50 premium at the end. So someone's getting $50 in that supply chain. So how much is retained by the supply chain then? Well, currently all of it. But if the user's paying $50, and if we kind of take a view that looks at what's happened in other supply chains where there have been premiums around or additional bonuses paid, then what's happened is the trade, the thing that's called the trade, the bit in between the end market and the farmer, the trade takes a bunch of cash out of that. Now, if we assume the trade takes about that much cash out of it, it leaves about that much to the farmer. Okay. Now, how much does it actually cost the supply chain? Now, I've got a good idea about this because I've put in place sustainability management systems, including carbon reporting systems, for a number of biofuel processors, traders in Switzerland, London, who are actively trading biofuels, actively trading bioenergy vectors. I know how much I charge them. It's not a lot of money, but it's great value. And that's about, on a per ton basis, that's about what it costs. If a biofuel producer is producing 250,000 tons of biofuel, if it doesn't cost them $1 a ton, you can employ a lot of people to do this for $1 a ton. Okay. So what does that leave at the land? Well, I mean, I'm trying to do the sums. The $46 is supposed to be wheat, and the $20 is supposed to be oilseed rape number. And there is this difference between them because you need twice as, you need different amounts of material. Actually, I think that sum's wrong now, I've done it. But it could leave up to $46 available at that end of the supply chain. Now, that's enough crumbs on the plate for everybody advising, everybody helping the farmer to actually begin to make a bit more healthy return at that end of the supply chain. So, in summary, my suggestion is that there is, in my view, an opportunity for farmers as we go forward to engage in a market where carbon accounting, carbon reporting can add value. In order to do that, the farmers and the guys advising farmers are going to need some tools that are helping greenhouse reporting and improvement. There's a tool called Farming Footprints that I've got an interest in with a company called Farmway, but there are other tools around. HGCA has got its tool, there's a Cool Farm tool, there's a whole, CLA have got a tool, a carbon footprinting tool for whole of crop tool. So there are a bunch of carbon footprinting tools around. There is a Department for Transport model, which allows you to do carbon footprinting on farm. There's a DEC model, which is a Department of Energy and Climate Change model, which allows you to do carbon footprinting on farm. But they're effectively all models that allow you to do carbon footprinting at farm level. And lastly, I think, if we think about carbon as we wind the clock forward, we need to think of a mechanism in which farmers can access that value that does exist in the market. I mean, that value exists, it's available. It's not currently being accessed by farmers, but it is available. And in order to do that, well, we need some kind of new market mechanism. So we've got a market mechanism that enables an oil bonus, which rewards performance at farm level. We've got a market mechanism that enables a wheat bonus, which rewards performance at farm level. And I think we need a market mechanism that might be called a carbon bonus that should reward performance at farm level. Thank you for your attention.